Welcome to Fire Your Hiring Habits with John Mitchell. This is the place where we dive into the world of talent acquisition, explore the challenges of today's workplace, and discover what it takes to build a thriving and successful organization.
My guest today is Maha Abouelenein, a personal branding expert, CEO of Digital and Savvy, and author of the USA Today bestseller, 7 Rules of Self-Reliance. With over 3 decades of experience crafting strategies for global corporations, startups, and high-profile individuals, Maha brings a wealth of insights on self-reliance and navigating the ever-changing landscape of communications in the digital age. Maha, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's good to be here.
So we're going to jump right in. Tell us a little bit about your journey from growing up with Egyptian parents in the U.S. to becoming a global communications expert. How does that journey happen?
Thank you so much. Well, actually, it's an interesting story. I'm 100% Egyptian. I'm born and raised in a small town in Minnesota called Mankato. My parents are Egyptian. They moved here to go to school and ended up staying about almost 30, 40 years in the U.S. And so I grew up in Minnesota. I had a very normal American upbringing, lived here, worked, went to school. And then at 27 years old, my parents, I had worked at General Mills here in Minneapolis, a consumer package company, Wheaties, Betty, Crocker, Cheerios. And at 27 years old, my parents we're going to move to Egypt, back to Egypt. And, they're from Egypt. I had visited Egypt on vacations and holidays, but never lived there. I certainly don't have a job or a professional network or anything. And at 27, you're working. You're not just fresh out of college still. So I moved to Egypt and had to really find a job. I wanted to work for a company like General Mills, like a consumer package company, Coca-Cola, P&G. Couldn't find a job. Ended up becoming the assistant and office manager to a billionaire who worked in telecoms, who launched cell phones and mobiles across the Middle East and North Africa.
Wow.
Something I had no experience in whatsoever, but internet was still launching, tech was still becoming a thing. And so I decided to work in the tech industry. Then I went on to building Weber Shandwick in the Middle East, a global PR firm, went to run communications and public policy for Google, launched Netflix in the Middle East, ended up spending 23 years between Egypt and Dubai, worked in the office of the ruler of Dubai for quite some time. And then in 2020, during the pandemic, I kind of got nervous. I'd never see my family again. My family was still here in Minnesota. And so I moved back to the US in 2020 and built an office here and a company here. And now I kind of straddle both. I do work in communications in Dubai. I also do work in communications here in the US. And I'm just really excited about how communications has evolved. It started a lot with working in companies and working with the private sector and working with governments, helping them understand the importance of storytelling like companies. And then it evolved into thinking about the importance of being a personal brand. And that's where I built my expertise in. I recently wrote this book, and that's where we got to where we are today.
Awesome. Great. Well, isn't it great that you can completely summarize your life in about 90 seconds?
I don't know about that. I don't know if it was 90 seconds, but yeah, it's a short version of it.
So, how did your experience as a primary caregiver at age 14 shape your perspective on self-reliance, which is part of the title of your book?
Yeah, I mean, when I came to write the book, I kind of thought, John, what are the things that I've been consistent in my career? Working for 30 years, 20 years of an entrepreneur, and self-reliance was the thing that I had to really focus on. How do I rely on myself to get myself out of situations? And one of them was like you mentioned, being a caretaker. My mother got multiple sclerosis when I was 14 years old, was quite, disabled for most of my life from 14 on. And it teaches you a lot about taking care of somebody, teaches you a lot about being patient and being empathetic and having to navigate both taking care of somebody and your work and your career and your jobs. And how do you rely on yourself to make the best decisions for yourself and make the best decisions for your family members? After my mother had MS for several years, almost 22 years, my father got ALS, Lou Gehrig's disease. And that was another lesson of like really trying to balance both their needs and my needs. And how do I rely on myself to make the right decisions, pay for the bills, do my job every day, build my career. And I really talk a lot about it in the book under the premise of you're stronger than you think you are. If you could rely on yourself to make the right decisions for yourself and others, you will discover confidence and strength that you didn't know that you had.
Yeah, that's a hard situation for any age, never
Anybody.
mind having to grow up very fast at 14. So yeah, well, well done, hard to do.
Yeah,
Just wow.
very, very difficult.
So, is that the inspiration for Seven Rules of Self-Reliance, or how does that are there
Yeah,
more?
it's a
Is
big
there
part
more
of
to it?
it. I'll tell you honestly, I never had a mission to go out and write a book about self-reliance. What I did was I took a step back and evaluated the things I've done in my life, and I realized what was the through line or the consistent thread was creating value for other people, but relying on myself to do that. And self-reliance is not something we're born with, but something we practice. So, it's not about being independent or not needing other people. If you are to be self-reliant, what my definition is to be a powerful asset. Like if I want to come to the table by relying on myself to build the right relationships and build my own network, come to the table by being and investing in myself by learning things. I'm not sending an email to my employer telling them to sign me up for training. I can do training online. I can rely on myself to be proactive in acquiring information. And think about it, John. Everything on the internet is for free. YouTube videos are for free. Podcasts are for free. We have the ability to rely on ourselves instead of expecting other people to do things for us. That's the premise of the book. You have the power to be your own power, and the most powerful asset on the planet is you.
Yeah, I work with a lot of students, and I tell them all the time, I'm like, "Man, I wish I was back where you are." There's so many resources. I mean, you just have the world at your fingertips,
Yeah, in
between.
real time.
Yeah, exactly. It's fantastic. So let's touch on just a couple of the rules, high level. I want to make sure people read the book and get the book, but can you elaborate a little bit on the first rule, stay low, keep moving, and how this principle has guided your career personally?
Yeah, I think the first rule of the book, which is sort of like the foundation for everything else, is, stay low, keep moving is a military term where you're like crunkered down, staying low so you don't get hit. But I took it as a metaphor for life. Think about how you can do with all the distractions we have in the world today, social media, comparison, doubters, people telling you can't do it. Fearing failure from other people waiting for permission from other people there's a lot of things that are holding us back. What I'm trying to say is stay low, get under the radar, and just go all in on yourself and focus. Focusing on your goals is harder to do because there's so many distractions and personally demands of our time between family obligations, work obligations. It's hard to stay focused on what you care about. So you have to make a deliberate effort to stay low so that you're not caught up in everyone's busy work and not focusing on your goals. Keep moving because I feel like you're going to have distractions. You're going to have setbacks. What can you do to keep moving through it? And that's the key here that even if you're going to have a hard day or a bad day, just start over and reset the next day. People who understand the importance of self-reliance know they have to stay low, to stay focused on their goals, and to keep moving despite obstacles or challenges because you're going to face them. That's the reality of how life works.
Well, and as people, I think we're going to be broadcasting this, but people listen to it at any time. Too many people wait, I feel like, to reset for a big milestone. Oh, it's the New Year's. Now I can reset. It's like, no, no, tomorrow, today, next hour.
Yeah, I really that's actually one of the third rules of the book is called don't be a waiter. Don't be waiting for permission from other people. Don't wait until you have more money in the bank account. Don't wait until you have all your ducks in a row. Don't wait because you fear failure. Don't wait because you fear judgment. Like there's so many things that we kind of just wait around for because we're like, it's going to get better later and I'll deal with it then. Don't be a waiter. Be a creator. Try to do the things that you want to see in your life. And I feel like it's a good message any time of the year to think back and say, huh, am I waiting for something? Is there something I can do to move this goal I have down one more yard? I really feel that people are often waiting. And like you said, don't wait for a milestone. Really take the action you want to see in the world.
Yeah, I was reminded, I won't quote the poem, but I remember hearing this poem when I was younger where they sat there and said, he gives this, it's a story basically of this old man and an old woman walking down the aisle to get married, and finally, but the conclusion at the end is this is the couple that finally waited till they could afford it.
Yeah,
So it's like,
no,
how
wait.
do exactly. So how can professionals proactively create those kind of, opportunities for themselves instead of waiting for them to land in their
I
laps?
mean, I think it's simple, like break it down into smaller steps, right? A goal is really hard when you look at it like a big mountain, like try to break it down into smaller steps. So I feel like if you want to go from being a waiter to a creator and you want to break it down into steps, think about what is it that you have, having a level of self-awareness. Well, these are the things I know and good at, or what you're missing, right? You may not be able to create the opportunities you want to see in the world today. You might be missing experience. You might be missing skills. You might be missing relationships. You might be missing context. You might be missing confidence. So you really need to think about what are the things that you're missing and then do an action plan to try to figure out how to get closer towards your goal by working on it. I don't like to boil the ocean and try to make myself do everything. Let's say I'm missing relationships. I'm going to try to build one new relationship every 3 months. Just set a small goal that you can
Yeah.
actually attain. Don't try to think of, "Oh, I need to create a network of 100 people this year." Like that, nobody has time for that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, so I do endurance events. If I wanted to set out and run an Ironman, right, or perform an Ironman, I don't go out and say, "Well, I'll cycle 100 miles the first day out." It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just
You
blow
start
up.
with, like, 10-minute walk.
And you get discouraged, right? Like you said at the beginning, the goals, when we set these big goals, they're very, very large. And so just understanding, yeah, okay, my vector's pointed in the right direction. What's the one step I can take today?
Yeah, and I feel like, baby steps are what it gives you not just progress, but gives you confidence. So
I
often
love the "What about Bob" quotes. This is great.
yeah, like, I just feel like we just need to make sure that we get the confidence to do the things that we wanna see in our lives, and sometimes we don't trust our gut, we don't listen to our gut, like, we know the answers, but we just ignore it. I want people to get trained. A lot of people, when they read the book, told me, "Maha, I got confidence and I learned how to trust myself more." That's winning because
Oh,
you actually have the answers, John, you know what's right for you. Sometimes you just don't do it or you like ignore like, "Oh, that's a lot of work," or that I just don't wanna tackle that. I'm trying to say you need to tackle that thing because
yeah.
life is too short. What are you waiting for?
Yep. Yeah, exactly. You've got to take that step. It's
Yeah.
great. So in your book, you also emphasize the importance of unlearning and relearning. Can you share an example when you had to unlearn something significant in your career?
Well, like I said, I lived and worked in the US before I moved overseas to live and work in Egypt and in Dubai, and I had to unlearn, um, the work environments, the work style, right? So American business culture is very different than the business culture overseas, and I was wired like, "We gotta get in, KPIs, results, deliverables," American style is get shit done, right? And then I took that, mentality and framework, and I moved overseas and they have their own ethos and their own style and their own ways of working, and it's more personal and building relationships and not getting to the jugular and the punchline, like cultivating time and cultivating relationships over time, and like spending time getting to know them, getting to know their families, spending time with them outside of work. That's a completely different structure than we have in America. Like,
Agreed.
you don't call somebody at home, you don't go to their homes. Like, work is work, home and home. There, it's very much mixed. So I had to unlearn all the ways that I worked in the US and learn new norms and new cultural nuances that exist in that culture. And the reason I put a rule in the book about unlearning, relearning, and investing in yourself is I find that the market's changing and so should you, right? You need to be adaptable. You need to be agile. You need to be learning all the time. And I'm not talking about taking courses all the time or going to attend classes. Always try to pick up something so that you can be culturally relevant for your industry or business because if you don't, they always that old adage, innovate or die. Like if I don't want to be left behind because I don't know things, right? I have access to the same information you have access to, John. I have the access to the same thing. It used to be where you went to school determined who you would become,
Oh, yeah.
right? That's not true anymore.
No, not at all.
Everyone has access to information. So I feel like we need to unlearn thoughts and leaders and things that we had before, and we need to relearn new things. Like, when I think about, for example, my company, if I wanted to hire people, I would have to like look for certain CVs with certain experience, with certain degrees and certain, career paths. That's not true anymore. People have different career paths, and in fact, you're not you shouldn't be a specialist. You should be a generalist, so you can be good at multiple things because the market's evolving, and you need to be an adaptable employee. And so, when I look for talent today, it's much different than when I used to look for talent 5 years ago. I used to really look at career path and experience, and now I look at instead of looking just at skills, I look at personality, I look at empathy, I look at kindness, I look at adaptability to my culture. Those weren't things we were ever hiring for before.
Yeah, and too often, back in the day, it would seem like things were very rigid in the requirements because things are changing so fast right now. If you still have that mentality that I'm hiring for a specific job or for a specific skill set, that's basically a short-term hire because things are changing so fast that people need to be constantly evolving and just one of the things that I look for, and it kind of ties to your title when I'm hiring, is I'm looking for resourcefulness.
Yes, of course.
I want somebody to go, I don't want to sit there and say, here, let me spell out exactly how you need to do this. I want to sit there and say, here's the big objective. Go be
You
creative, figure this out.
go figure it out. Yeah, I love that. It's so important too. And like the skills that we're hiring for, again, like I said, we're unlearning what is it required. Some people don't even have degrees, and they're just as
Yeah.
successful entrepreneurs or business people in the world today.
Yeah, exactly. Love it. So we've been talking about self-reliance. Let's help me segue. How does your approach or how does this tie to your personal branding efforts that you've been doing as well? Or how does it
Yeah,
link? Or
yeah,
does it?
love this question. So the biggest chapter in the book teaches people if you want to rely on yourself, you need to know the importance of building and protecting your reputation, i.e., your personal brand. And I find that in this world today, your experience no longer is the only thing that matters. It's how you storytell, it's how you market yourself, it's how you show up in the world. And so the reason it's the biggest chapter in the book is because I want people to focus on it, not just online, but offline. Your personal brand is not your personal life. Your personal brand is your reputation. And I want people who are employees of companies to say, oh, I'm not a personal brand. I'm not a company. That doesn't apply to me. I work at a corporate. I'm fine. In fact, you're not fine because your personal brand, are you resourceful? Are you a team player? Are you a collaborator? Are you a good listener? Are you a doer? Are you delivering results? That's your personal brand at work. It's your reputation. How do you want to show up? And I feel like you need to be intentional about it and proactive about it. That's the key. People just think, I have a reputation. There's nothing I can do about it. You shape it by
Oh,
your
yeah.
online and your offline activities. And so I work with a lot of people to help build their personal brands. And it could be a plumber, a real estate agent, a dog sitter, a entrepreneur, a startup, a CEO, a celebrity. It doesn't matter. Everybody has a brand.
Too often, I think people think about personal brand. They're like, oh, well, when the minute you put brand, it's like, do I have a logo? And that's not really what it
That's
is.
not
It's
what
like,
it's about at all. Exactly, and I'm glad you brought that up because it does matter. There's so many misconceptions about a personal brand. You have to be a celebrity to have a personal brand. You have to have a company to have a personal.
right. Yeah, yeah.
You have to have a large social media following to have a personal brand. None of these things are true.
That's great. That's great. It's a good clarification. So, staying on the personal branding piece, how is that changing in the age of AI and automation?
Yeah, I think it's more important now more than ever to have your personal brand because of AI, right? Who are you authentically? Who do you want the world to see? What do you want people to know about you? How can you drive it? How can you be intentional about it? Because of AI, building your personal brand is more important now more than ever.
Do you see that it's easier or more difficult because of AI, in order to maintain or to enhance a personal brand?
I mean, I think about what your personal brand is your reputation. AI can't replace who you are as a person, right? How do you treat
Okay.
people? How do you show up in the world? That's something that could never be replaced by AI. But If you have a personal brand and want to create more content on social media to talk about what you're passionate about, you can use AI tools to help build the content and edit the content for you. That's definitely something that you should be using. You should use it as a tool in building your AI, but it does not replace you as a personal brand. It is something that can help take this podcast and edit it into clips, help you write copy, help you write the things that you care about in your personal brand and build a tool around it that can speak in your voice and share your ideas to help make it quicker for you to share your ideas and thoughts on a more automated level. That's where it comes into play. And that's where it can bring tremendous value.
Yeah, and I also found AI is also a way to test what an external view of your personal brand might be. Like so, my wife, she asked, she went to Chat GPT and said, tell me a joke as John Mitchell. And she was really excited. She's like, "This is actually pretty good." So I run the Global Electronics Association (IPC), and so it came up with a joke that was around resistors and capacitors and things like this. And I told her this is really a terrible joke. So that's it's not even funny. And she goes, "Well, I think maybe it got it exactly right. You're just not funny."
That's hilarious. Yeah, I mean, the capabilities are incredible. Like anything, it's a tool. You need to work with it. You need to modify it. You need to edit it. It doesn't replace you, but it definitely can save you time. It can save you money. It can be a valuable asset in your weapons of things that you do for creating content or storytelling. It's something that you definitely should not marginalize your use of. You should learn to learn it, but like anything, practice it and really perfect how you're going to leverage it.
Thank you. That's great. So can you share a story about a time when your reputation as currency opened doors for you professionally?
Yeah, I think if you build a strong personal brand, i.e., reputation, opportunities will come to you. You'll have the opportunity. Now, if you are creating a brand to be a creator, obviously you can monetize that through partnerships, through monetizing your content, through getting brand deals. That's one way to do it. But if you're not an influencer and you're not a content creator and you want to invest in your reputation and personal brand, it's going to be a asset to help you generate leads and attract talent. If you are an entrepreneur and you want to get the best talent, if you have a strong reputation, people will come work for you. If you're an entrepreneur, you have a strong reputation, you can attract an investor or a strategic partner or someone that you want to collaborate with. It builds the foundation for opportunities to come to you, and those opportunities can create monetary value for your company or your business. I like to use my personal brand to create content so people know about my services. They know, oh, she's a personal brand expert. She's a marketing expert. She's a communications expert. I use it for lead generation so I can attract customers and by showing my credibility and my expertise and my skills. And that's exactly how you should do it too.
All right. So let's, for people just starting off, you're all about trying to create, but what about people who are, down the path a little ways, a decade or two down the road, and they're looking to reinvent their careers?
Yes. I love this question.
What advice do you have for them if as they're trying to do this maybe later in life? And I hate to use the word later in life,
Yeah,
when I
because
turned
they're living
50.
longer and we're doing more, and
Exactly.
I'm
I told people
55.
when I turned 50 that I'm a third done. I'm going for 150 people. Here we go.
I love it. So first of all, this book and the message and the things that I think about when it comes to personal branding, if you are a corporate leader in transition, so you've been at the same company for a long time, you're thinking of switching companies, or you're thinking of becoming an entrepreneur, you need to learn two skills that I think are really critical in this day and age. One is how do you build your own relationships and networks? Because if you leave that company, you need to have your own relationship and your own network. You're not going to be able to tap into the company's relationships. You should take the time to learn how to build your own networks, build your own relationships, and value them and serve them. The second thing is knowing how to have a strong personal brand, your reputation. So is that thought leadership? Is that sharing your ideas? That'll attract either the next role or the next company that you're trying to, because you're cementing yourself as an expertise in your field. So if you're going to go from corporate, want to get a different job, that's ways it'll help you. The other thing is, let's say you are reinventing yourself. I think my next book is going to be about that. How can you reinvent yourself? It's easy. You could quit your job today, John, and start a completely different career tomorrow because you have access to the internet. You have access to information at your fingertips for free. All you need is information and effort, and put those two together. Do I have time to make effort to learn new information and to learn new things? Then you can do it. So if you want to, you're about to retire and you're thinking, oh, very young. Everybody, the concept of retirement is completely discombobulating. Retirement is when now you have experience, you have skills, you actually know things, you have a good, steady finding of your foothold of who you are and what you believe in. You have good values. Now you're ready to actually put that experience to work. Is it as an entrepreneur? Is it in another company? Is it as a consultant? Take your skills and resources and package it in a way that makes you feel authentic to yourself and your purpose, and making that aligned. And I coach a lot of people on how to make that transition, focusing on your networks, focusing on your social media presence. You don't have to be everywhere. Go to LinkedIn, build it on LinkedIn, and be consistent. Start with one step and do that very, 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 very well before you go on to the next step.
Yeah. So in my book, Fire Your Hiring Habits, where we talk about how to find and keep the best people, as part of your team, I talk about this, in terms of, finding and utilizing people who maybe have actually retired. I mean, when I was at Bose, we were hiring a brand new team, hundreds of people, and one of the recruiters that was helping us was like, "What are you looking for?" I was like, "I need somebody with at least 30 years of experience, because we're all young and we think we have all the answers. We need somebody to sit down with us and say, actually, you guys are idiots. Pay attention here. We've kind of gone down this path before." So having that diversity of experience, diversity of age, diversity of,
Perspective.
ethnicity, gender, all of
Perspective.
that stuff.
Yeah. So
Perspective, exactly. It's so important. And so I would just, to those listeners who may be thinking, well, I've kind of run my course, there is definitely a role and a need for those individuals all over in any industry. And as you say, you can start it yourself. You don't have to rely on somebody to hand you, here's the new career on a golden platter. Go on the internet, be diligent, take steps every day on this, and it can happen very easily.
yeah. And I feel like the rules have changed so much, John, right? And so the playbooks have changed of what we are supposed to do or what we should do. You can define the things the way that you want them. No careers are no longer linear where you're working at one place forever. You don't need to be specialized. You can have general experience that applies to any industry. And I love that about the workforce today, because it allows people to use their skills and talents to the best of their ability in any format, in any industry. And that's what makes working today so much different than it was years ago, even 5 years ago or 2 years ago.
All right, so we've talked. I'm jumping around. You have so much depth and differential areas that I just want to talk on a lot of them. But let's talk a little bit about communications and media, if you could.
Yes.
So you have a role on the global board of directors for Associated Press.
Yes.
How has this influenced your perspective on communication and media?
I mean, I think about the AP is the only nonprofit organization in the world that does media. And they are very fact-based, they're not right, they're not left. And they're funded by people who subscribe to their services, but basically local news industry, local papers. And I really love being close to, so I'm on the board, so I get to see all the business of how they do things, but elections, how they cover news stories in war zones. So the AP has called the US elections since the 1800s. Like, this organization's been around forever. I gotta get it right in the number of the 1900s, whenever it was, I don't know the number, but more than 130 years or 150 years or 180 years, they've been calling elections. Municipalities, they are the source that everyone takes from. They have to be nonpartisan. They have to be no party affiliation whatsoever. And I think about the news today, how people get news today has changed dramatically. People get their news from TikTok. People get their news from Snapchat. People get their news from friends and family. It's no longer a fact-based news organization that's providing news, and that changes the dynamic for brands, for companies, for businesses, because you have to go where the attention is. If most people are consuming information and news on a phone, how does that make a challenge for news organizations to be mobile first, to be content first, to be agile in their storytelling? Because citizens can broadcast anything from the world with the touch of a phone, and they can just push live and be citizen reporters. So the news industry has been tremendously disrupted. And now you see many news organizations laying off employees, going direct to consumer. You see AI playing a role in editing and the writing process. A lot of newsrooms are like, we don't need to hire all these people. AI can do the work faster in half the time, whatever those numbers may look like. But I feel like the news industry is definitely shifting. The storytellers are definitely shifting. And I find that, things like Substack and Reddit are reliable sources for many, many people.
Yeah, I was surprised that, when people come to IPC to use, electronic standards, one of our primary sources that, the lead in that comes to our webpage, it's Reddit.
Yeah.
Yeah. So people are
A
going
lot
there.
of people I know check Reddit before they check anything.
There's some people you don't even realize you're being directed to it. It's just that,
That's
if
the
you're
source.
searching, it just comes to the top of the fold. Yeah, exactly. So communicator, author, self-reliance, also podcaster.
Podcaster.
So what motivated you to start your podcast, Savvy Talk? And so for those of you who are listening, you should also, move over from and check out Maha's Savvy Talk. But how does it complement the other stuff?
Yeah. So, John, I have to be honest, when I started to think about my personal brand, I was pretty insecure. I was like, I'm not confident I want to be these people that creates videos on social media and talks on communications by writing blogs. What's the format that I'm comfortable in? Oh, I'm comfortable in a podcast. It's my voice. I don't have to worry about my hair or what I look like or if I'm 10 pounds heavier.
And here we are on the video
Yeah.
podcast now, right?
No, but I always felt like it's I'm gonna dabble my foot into being a personal brand, and I started with the podcast several years ago, 5, 6, 8 years ago. And that was a format that I was comfortable because I listen to podcasts. I love podcasts. I can listen to it on the way to the airport, at the airport, driving in my car, walking on the treadmill, going for a walk outside. Like it's one of these frictionless mediums that I can listen to anywhere. I can listen to thousands of hours of books or podcasts for free. And so I thought this is the medium I feel the most comfortable with, and is how I'm going to start being a content creator. And that's what I started to do. And I find it fascinating to talk to people. I like to interview people and hear their stories and share their stories and give a platform for that. So that's the premise of the podcast and how it came about. My company's called Digital and Savvy. And so we made the podcast calling it Savvy Talk.
Awesome. Awesome. So you talk about something else, another principle, and I'd like to hear how you've applied it to your life. So you talk about the principle of live with no regrets. Can you share an example of how you've applied this principle personally?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say and easy to do, right, John? But I put it in the book for a purpose. It was the last rule of the book because I feel like sometimes things happen to us and we let it define us, and it might hold us back from achieving what we can actually achieve. And so I really wanted one of the rules of self reliance to be if you can rely on yourself to not live with regret, then you're going to live a life free from the things that are holding you back. Don't walk around with that baggage. Life is too short to say, I woulda, shoulda, coulda. What can you do to think about some of the things that happened in your life? Take your struggles, turn them into strengths. Take your setbacks, turning into comebacks. I told a story up front in the show about my parents, and I could have regretted that I just spent most of my time being a caretaker and taking care of other people and putting their needs first and making enormous sacrifices so I can be a good daughter and take care of my ailing parents that really needed my help. And I don't regret it. It could have been a very difficult chapter in my life that I let define me. And I decided to use that as a pillar to learn about empathy and have perspective and be patient and be grateful for what I have and that I can get up every day and put my feet on the ground and get out of bed and walk. And that's something very simple that both of them were unable to do.
Yeah, I think too often we look at these challenges or difficulties that we encounter, and yeah, living with no regrets, as you defined it here, is really about attacking those things, saying, I'm going to just deal with this. I'm not going to ignore it. I'm going to be part of it. And while, you said something like, you didn't let it define you, but actually, I think it did define you in a
In a
great way.
good way, but I didn't think of it, yeah, you're right.
Because you're resilient. You know you can take on hard things, and that aspect, learning that, especially at a young age, anybody throws anything at you. It's like, "Oh, well, we've got this problem." And you're like, "Yeah, yeah, whatever. I've already lived through that. That's not a problem."
That's a really good the really good point.
Listen, you mentioned storytelling when we were talking a little bit about communications and media. Um, what role do you think storytelling plays in effective leadership and personal branding?
I mean, I think stories are what connect us.
Yeah.
Storytelling is one of the things that helps bring us together. It helps build trust. It helps build credibility. It moves us with emotion. So how you tell a story is how you connect with others. And I feel like it can be any story. If it's giving somebody feedback about their job, is it a story about your business? Is it a story about something you want to get on the news? It is a story you're sharing on a podcast. Like, how do you tell a story? How do you invite the user, the reader, to be a part of your emotions or the call to action that you're trying to elicit? I think storytelling is one of the oldest things of sitting around the campfire telling stories. We love it.
The word connector you kept bringing up there, I think it's so important. We can give a bunch of facts, but facts, without the color of story around them are pretty useless. It's
Exactly, and stories inspire us. Think about the stories they would tell us during the Olympics, so we learned about the athlete and their upbringing and their training. Those are the stories that connect us to that athlete. It's something so simple, but it really helps us, the reader, the user, the follower, the viewer, really take it to a different level of being a part of a story.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic because you're right. Staying on your Olympics theme, it's otherwise it was just, oh, this person got, point zero 0.03, seconds faster than, another record. Who cares? But it's like, actually, they started in a little
What
town
they
like
did
I
to
live in,
what they did to
Yeah,
overcome
exactly.
that, or, how did we see ourselves in their story? Like, even think about Simone Biles, how she was a decorated athlete and she stopped performing and training for a couple years. Like, she said, "I needed to come back, so I had no regrets. I didn't think about what if could have been if I didn't go back and train again." And she did, and she came back in Paris and did a great job. But it's just the stories of the inspiration of talking about her mental health, talking about, you need to take time out for yourself. Doesn't matter if you're a decorated Olympic athlete, you need to do what's best for you and your mental health.
Here's another aspect that I thought was interesting. Can you discuss how your experience as an advisor to AI and Global Gaming League has, how do these roles aligned with your experience or changed your experience?
Yeah, so I never sought out to be on boards or advisory boards of companies, but then once I had a couple projects I was working on, said, "Would because I'm a communications person, could you like be an advisor on our board?" And it's not a board seat; it's an advisory role
Yeah.
where like sometimes they just want to bounce off ideas off of me or ask me questions, or I give them advice on how they should build their personal brands or what they should be doing from a communication standpoint. For me, it's so much fun to be working in different industries where you're an advisory role. You get to meet incredible people who also sit on these advisory boards. But understand, when you get in out of your own industry in your own head and you sit with other people, it's just like sitting at different tables at dinner. When you have a family get together, when you sit at the kids' table versus the adults' table, there's different perspectives, and you just get to add your value and add your secret sauce and also learn from them. Like, it's an extraordinary ability for me to learn. Um, AI is a AI is a company that really focuses on the crypto industry and monitoring what's happening on blockchain networks using AI. Global Gaming League. Gaming is the largest and fastest growing sport in the world. It hasn't hit mainstream yet. We're trying to get that into the culture a little bit more. But gamers are a big industry, a big revenue generating operation as well.
Yeah, that's great. I love the story of the table, and it's so true that if you go to a a company dinner, the meeting at each table is completely different. It's just it's a matter of what's being said, or where does the topic go. So I think that's fascinating. That's great. We talked a little bit about older people. What advice would you give young professionals just starting their careers about building, maintaining a strong personal brand, or making their way in the world?
Yeah, I love this question because I feel like if there's things that we would have known when we were younger, like how much this shapes your reputation, what you post on LinkedIn, what you post on social media, how do you build networks at a young age? Like this book is really, really a great it's a great book for people who are young adults who are starting their careers or students, because I want them to be mindful about not waiting for permission, not expecting people to do other things for them, learning how to invest in themselves, knowing that lifelong learning, like once you're done with school, doesn't mean you're done learning, learning the importance of building your brand and your reputation and how you treat people and how you show up in the world matters. Building a good network, having good relationships is going to be your currency going forward. It's not what you know, it's who you know. We've heard that a lot. It's an old adage, but it's so, so true.
It's too true.
And so if you were to make those deposits in your trust bank when you're young, imagine the relationships you'll have over time. Think about the college students that you sit with in class. They might be your future employers, future investors, future CEOs that you might want to work with. Then you get into the workforce, build relationships with people that you work with. That's the second set of your network. Then you might switch careers, build relationships with those partners. If you are compounding relationships over time, just like we talk about compounding financials and savings, you will be rich in relationships, and that matters.
That really matters. Yeah, that's fantastic. When I work with, so I do some mentoring with younger professionals as well. One of the things that I talk about is, be the person that's solving problems, not highlighting problems.
Yeah, be the person that's solving problems, not highlighting problems. The other thing too is like when you think about, this is something I learned also working in corporate and then working as an entrepreneur. Like, the employee's role is to take things off of their manager's plate.
Yeah.
Add value to them.
Yeah. When you do it, you find that the next project, your name comes up.
Or you get to work on the things you care about, right? So if let's say you work on this project, but you really want to work on something else, you have to deliver your current role first.
That's right.
And
Absolutely.
value to your current role before you go on to the next thing.
Yeah, here's the shiny object, but you better make sure you're doing the blocking and tackling underneath it first, so that they go, yeah, he does his job, and then she goes off and she can do the the great thing as well. But you got to be doing both. It's
Yeah,
like yeah, it's great. So last question, here we go. Looking ahead, here we go. The future, right? Off we go. What do you see as the biggest challenges and opportunities for professionals in the communications field?
I think looking ahead, for people in the communications field, you need to be doing a couple things. Constantly learning new things, learning about new tools, AI platforms, all that kind of stuff, but also be on the field and in the field. So if you are in communications and want to be presenting stories on behalf of your clients, or you're in communications and you want to, you're a storyteller, you got to know the market. You have to know the environment. You have to know, what are people consuming? Where are they consuming? What's happening in culture? Being relevant. I feel like the biggest thing about communicators that makes them successful is if they have constantly updating their skills and they understand what's happening in the market around them. Those are the things, because a good story is not about what you say, but when you say it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So yes, keep up the skills, but be out there, be active, be in the mud.
In the field is so important.
That's great. Ma, thank you so much for your time today. Really enjoyed the entire conversation. So for all of our listeners, remember, 7 rules for self-reliance. There it is. 7 rules of self-reliance. Pick it up today. And if you're looking for another podcast to listen to, it's Savvy Talk.
Thank you. Thank you so much, John. Appreciate you.
This has been Fire Your Hiring Habits. If you want to empower your organization to reach new heights, go to johnwmitchell.com to find the techniques and tools you need to attract and retain the best team and boldly reimagine your workplace. Fire Your Hiring Habits with John Mitchell is a production of Forbes Books.